All righty. And we are live. This is the second installment of Talks with 1029. I am your host, DJ 1029. And today we have a special treat for you. We have Little Rock's own Sean Cook with Clusters of Fornication. How you doing today, Sean?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I've got a little list here of some stuff that I've been meaning to ask you. We've been friends for quite some time. I know a lot of these answers, but the goal today is to get the folks that are listening to us a little bit more acquainted with Clusters of Fornication and be like, hey, this is a really cool dude. He's got some cool music. I want to go see him. And that's everybody's goal, is to get people to come out, support the scene, see what's going on Little Rock and the surrounding area here in Central Arkansas. So the first question I've got for you is, when did you start making music?
Ultimately, I was making music by the time I was 14.
Okay.
I was just toying around on some crappy Casio keyboards,
Right.
because I was a big fan of Devo and some of the new wave that was out, Human League.
Gotcha. Yep.
Back when I was a youngin'.
Cool.
And then I started doing Clusters about 2019, which is several incarnations after when I started writing.
Right. Okay. So in your own words, how would you describe Clusters of Fornication?
I think I inadvertently took a lot of influence from Clan of Zymox.
Okay.
They were huge heroes of mine all through the 90s. So, and 90s is about when I really started writing music. And so it kind of naturally rubbed off. And not just like, not the polygram era, but more the 4AD era.
Okay.
I really loved that era. And then also the Ronnie Mooring solo stuff. So that kind of stuck with me. And then, so maybe Clusters of Fornication sounds somewhere between Depeche Mode meets Clan of Zymox meets The Cure-ish, maybe. I don't know.
Gotcha. Cool. It has a goth feel, but a little bit of a pop to it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So the next question is, where does the name Clusters of Fornication come from?
It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke.
Right.
Really, it's my way of saying clusters of the F-bomb, or a cluster F-bomb.
Yep.
Without actually saying it. And when people hear it, they kind of snicker because they're like, "Oh, I get that." So that's kind of where the joke was going in the first place. And it's also, it's a statement. It's a statement for the situation that the world is in. It's, that's kind of where it came from.
Gotcha. Alrighty. So you mentioned that you started doing music when you were 14 and started off playing with Casio keyboards and things like that. I did much the same, with all those little pre-programmed back beats, and me and my sister would sing goofy little songs on it. Where do you get your inspiration from to make music?
Well, I don't write unless I'm inspired. And it's usually things, I do some personal stuff, but a lot of it's world and socio-economics and socio-political stuff. I grew up on the Fix and Depeche Mode, of course, which both were very politically driven bands. And so they kind of stuck with me. So a lot of it's like that. A lot of it's comes from a position of wanting to inform, maybe.
Gotcha. Okay. You want to get a message out to folks. Yeah. Gotcha. Alrighty. So kind of answered this question by background a little bit, that we can see on camera. Do you have a home studio, and what is your creation process like? Do you have like a set day of the week that you're like, okay, it's Monday, 7 o'clock, I'm going to put in a couple hours and work on some stuff? Or is it just more of an organic thing? It's like you're sitting there, at work or, at home eating dinner, and you're like, hey, I got a great idea, and you go into the studio.
No, well, yeah, it's very loose. I don't have like a regimen. But if like I said, I do write when I'm inspired to write. And I write with a variety of different things. I've got, kind of the synthesizers and stuff all over the place. And
Yeah.
my studio.
Yeah.
But my studio is set up to be comfortable to me, so it makes it to where it's a lot easier. But like right now, my studio time consists of me practicing for upcoming shows.
Right.
I'm doing that a lot right now. So
And,
I've got Fayetteville, and then I've got the one with you in a few weeks.
yeah. And do you feel like the artwork that you've created, because all of those pieces around you are pieces of art that you've made yourself, do you feel like those sometimes give you inspiration?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with Ray Bradbury. I assume you are.
Yeah.
Ray Bradbury would often like talk about how much he loves his environment that he writes in. So he would, like when Ray Bradbury Theater used to be a thing, you'd get like a tour of his studio / office, and it was like all full of really cool things. I don't know that he made any of it, but I think it was things that made him comfortable.
Right. Gotcha. So it's creating that space that, for lack of a better term, the man cave that kind of, helps us get the creative juices going. So that having been said, and getting a peek into the creative process and the area that you surround yourself with, because you're a one-man show, can you speak to the difficulties and freedoms that being a one-man show, a solo artist on stage, gives you? I would imagine, it's right off the get-go, it's probably super easy. You don't have to work with bandmates, and schedules and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. What are some of the other things that you've dealt with, being a solo artist, either on stage or, working there in your studio, or just in general in the creative process?
Well, one-man band cons might be I set up and tear down by myself.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate running the merch booth and doing the performing and then meet and greet afterwards.
Yeah.
And the biggest one is, oh, you're a one-man band. How does that work? When I'm talking to like venues.
Right.
And then I feel like, well, I did this, and this with these people, so maybe that stands for something.
Yeah.
So I do a little name dropping in order to maybe get a few gigs.
Yeah. And I mean, let's face it, a lot of people may not realize this, but there's a lot of big artists that are on the radio, if anybody actually listens to the radio anymore, like Trent Reznor, for example, that they are Nine Inch Nails. Yeah. And he hires on basically studio musicians to come on a tour with them, but in the process it's pretty much just him. Andy from Combi Christ is the same way. So I think it's commendable that you're able to manage all of the different bells and whistles and things that are going on, dealing with the stage fright, dealing with technical issues or whatever come up all by yourself. So that's definitely something that takes a pair of cojones, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, you've been doing music for quite some time, and you've seen a little bit of a change in the industry. And I like to talk about this with artists. This may show both of our ages, but I remember growing up, going to shows and things like that. Merch was like be all end all of bands when they toured. Like if they didn't sell enough shirts or CDs or albums or whatever, they weren't eating that evening, because they rarely got a lot of money to perform to begin with. And if you've got a band with multiple dudes in it, or several people in there that you got to split it amongst, that's even worse. So there's that aspect of it, but then there's also the change that we've seen with Bandcamp and Spotify, and less of a physical tangible product and more of a digital world. Can you speak to that and your experiences with that?
I don't make much money from like live performances. I make more of my money from Bandcamp or from my performing rights organization that I belong to, because of licensing and synchronization. So with that said, I mean, I don't make a lot, but I make more than I did if I was, not, going for it. But yeah, I do make more money off of Bandcamp and ASCAP.
Okay, gotcha. So, have you seen a change within recent years, specifically, with this pandemic where we were all isolated for a couple of years? Did that help your creative process being stuck inside, and you got nobody but your thoughts, and you're like, okay, well, let's sit down and make a song? Or have you had any influences like that during that time?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. One of the things that it taught me was that, well, stuff is not good right now, so how do we make it better? So then you're left with your inventiveness,
Right.
and so I try to be as inventive as possible. You kind of do the same thing, you always
Yep.
have, and um, I think it's I think it's that gets us out of any kind of rut that might be thrown our way.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, um, I would like to ask next. I know because you've always got different projects working on in your brain. You've worked with Das Gift. You've worked with a variety of other artists. What are some future things that you've got on the burner for Clusters of Fornication? Do we expect an album coming out or some new material? I know you said you're going to be performing with us with Club Nevermore on 426 at Vino's. Do you plan on unveiling any new song, anything like that? Something, a surprise for us?
No, I'm working on some new stuff, and I'll wait till it's a little bit more finished before I pull it out. But I am putting in a few more covers, or a couple covers that you may not know about that
Okay.
go over pretty well. But so far, I'm working on doing a new EP, and I've been recording that for like the last 6 months, and in my studio here, and I'm working on trying to get it finalized. I'm about 4 songs into about a 5-song EP, and
Gotcha.
hopefully by midsummer I'll have it out.
Right on.
And I'm also working on another project because I'm starting to work DAWless. And for those that don't know what DAWless is, it's basically with just all hardware and no software.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I talked with some more about that, about doing a lot of stuff in DAW, because that's what their start was. They did a lot of things digitally, and then they had to cross that divide of okay, well, we did all this digitally, but we want to go on the road and perform it. So they needed to learn the instrumentation of it to be able to perform part of that live on stage. But you're going the opposite way. You're going completely analog, is what you're saying, if I understand correctly.
yeah, going analog with like drum machines and
Awesome.
sequencers and all kinds of stuff. I've got like a mountain of gear now that
Yeah.
I'm just kind of working on and writing new stuff with. I've got a couple of samplers, and so I'm working on some new stuff for another project, and that's going to be called Chrono Sapien. But
Chrono Sapien.
but that's probably a year out.
Okay. All right. Some stuff to look forward to there. All right. So, where can folks find out about all of the different projects, Clusters of Fornication? You also do a lot of community outreach stuff too. So, give us some plugs on where we can find out what Sean's up to.
Okay, so I do the shadow transmission. That's what I started as before I met you, as a means to just kind of like disseminate information. The things I was finding out about the underground culture in Central Arkansas. When I moved up here,
Yeah.
and then after that, I of course joined with you at Club Nevermore, and I'm still with that. And but my other thing is Retro Modern, which is a community outreach um, series of events that happens quarterly, and each time it goes to a kind of a grassroots charity. Nothing like big, like like one of the like some sort of blood bank or anything like that. It's all about local outreach.
Right.
And
And can you speak to those events? Like, I was there for the first one, and that benefited a homeless shelter. Do I
yeah,
remember correctly?
it benefited ACA, which is Arkansas Community Advocates, which help out with like the homeless as well as feeding them.
Awesome. Awesome. And then the second one that I actually had the pleasure of guest DJing with you, we did a benefit for a couple of dog shelters. Is that correct?
Right, both of them in the Searcy area. It was Kensett and Judsonia. Both of them might as well be suburbs of Searcy.
Got
But both of them are. I volunteer at those,
Okay.
helping them like walk the dogs and so forth. And they're pathetic little shelters. They're really horrible, and they're getting better. And that was part of the reason why we wanted to help them is to, help keep them in food and maybe help work on some of the, they need some structure
Right.
in those areas.
A few
Keep them.
dollars. Yep. Gotcha. And then you were putting a zine out for a little while there, and that's been coming out on occasion too. Can you speak to the zine that you put together?
Yeah, it's called Darkensaw, and I just put one out about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Yeah, so that one also comes out quarterly. So it comes out just before the retro modern, just to kind of preeminent release. And
Gotcha.
that basically is kind of like it's put on by the shadow transmission is what it goes under, and it's again me using the shadow transmission to disseminate information.
Gotcha. So just for folks, but maybe not necessarily looking at us right now on video, maybe listening audio wise. So can you give us a couple of websites that they should go to check out?
Well, you can find out pretty much anything about the music from clustersoffornication.com.
Okay.
The shadow transmission, just look up the shadow transmission on Instagram and it'll go to the shadow transmission thing. I've stopped keeping up a website for that one because it doesn't do enough to warrant one.
Right.
But I do have one for retro modern, and that's retromoderne.org, and that's spelled RetroModerne.org.
Right. Yep, there's the E on the end of that. Yeah. And I was going to leave that up to you to spell it out because I knew I was going to screw it up. So thank you for that. All righty. So we've talked about you're starting with music. We've talked about a little bit about some of your influences, how the creative process works for Clusters of Fornication, some of the collaborations and some of the community outreach that you do with your music. Was there any other topics that you'd like to discuss while we've got you on here to give people a feel for what they can expect on the 26th this month over Vino's, things that they should check out, other bands or other influences, other projects that you're currently working on?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but for the last couple of years, this last 2023, not included, but 2021 and 2022, the Shadow Transmission has a Bandcamp page, and the proceeds for those releases on the Bandcamp page have gone to local charities. One has gone to the Van, which is a homeless outreach, and the other one has gone to local LGBTQ organizations.
Awesome.
And if you go to those, you'll see a lot of the local bands, which is very important that you support local acts. And every one of the bands that are on those releases are local.
Cool. So, very cool.
So please do. And most people don't realize that there are as many dark music acts in Arkansas as there are. And there's about 20 to 25 at this point now.
Yeah. As a booking agent for Club Nevermore, I was quite surprised that we could do our own festival, and we may be doing that. There has been lots of talks about that coming down the pike with just Arkansas bands, because we have so many great artists in the state that, I've noticed it because I moved out here about 6-7 years ago from California. There's this weird phenomenon that if you don't live here, you don't really notice it. But in the news, even in the weather, they rarely ever mention the state of Arkansas for whatever reason. And usually when they do talk about Arkansas, a lot of times it's like Florida. It's like, oh, Jesus, what'd they do down in Arkansas? So it's very important that we get the word out to let folks know that there's a lot of alternative folks like us here. There is a lot of free thinkers. There's a lot of creative and talented individuals in the state that hopefully we're able to, give a PA to, we're able to boost their signal. And I wanted to thank you for your efforts in doing that, because that's always been first and foremost in the projects that you work on, is how to build that community, how to get that signal boosted, and how to get people to come out and have fun. Because, a lot of times folks within our community, if they dress a little bit differently, they look a little bit different, they have a different sexual orientation than quote unquote the accepted and normal of this part of the country, they're scared to go out. They don't feel like they have anywhere they can go out and be themselves. So that's a very important thing with Club Nevermore. It's a very important thing with Retro Modern, all of the projects that we're part of. So I want to say thank you to those folks as well, that come out, feel safe with us to those events. And we'll keep doing them. As long as they keep coming out, we'll keep putting stuff out there, and we'll keep having a good time.
Yep, we're a safe space for everyone.
Yes. So wrapping this up here, Shadow Transmission, you can Google it, check that out. Clustersoffornication.com is where you can find more on your specific music project. And we will anxiously be looking forward to new material. I wanted to thank you very much, Sean, for sitting down with us today. And you have a good weekend, man.
You as well. Thank you for having me.